Yeah, yeah.
Move it. Get more farther up. This I do all the time. Everyone comes in shul, you have to early to get a back seat. You know, it's universal. So people come and sit there, please move forward.
I'm another. I have to sit.
Will you stop?
It's kind of amazing.
Israeli. I was gonna say.
I'm reading Israeli notes. How can I not?
How do you put up?
This year the Seder I get to say I need convention. I'm almost 7 days.
I was just saying to her, I just had a shock because I was just reading my high school. Went to Flatbush.
I went to Flatbush.
My newsletter. They announced that the 50th anniversary was class of 74.
Maybe the same
I was
time.
class of 75.
You were?
I was class of 99.
Guess what? Me too.
You were class of 72?
My father was in Flatbush. My uncle was the first high school graduating class.
So was my mom. My mom was the first graduating.
Oh, yeah, what year was
that?
65? I think 64.
No.
64?
It couldn't have been. I was much earlier than that.
No, high school.
High school. The first graduating high school.
What's your name?
High school was much
Lana
earlier.
Mandel.
It was in the
Oh,
50s.
you're
Jeff's
Jeff's
wife.
wife, yeah.
Yes.
Rabbi Eliab, Rabbi a couple of customers. And he also.
Well, Rabbi Haramati.
Aramati.
They were an institution.
I was very close.
We sent to Israel every summer for like a teacher program. I used to teach them. Back in the 80s. Every summer was some dude had a summer program.
Yeah. So my favorite story about Rabbi Haramati. So when I was a senior, I was going to Israel from Gatton back then. Was it Saturday? Oh, you have to start.
Okay. Good.
I'll tell you the story later.
Yes, I'm going to begin. I have a page in the middle we'll get to. I want to begin by explaining the title. Anyone remember the title?
Hester.
Oh, wow. Most people have no idea what the title was. It's good. What was it?
Hester. Yeah.
So what's Esther hiding, right? What's Esther hiding? And there's a long word in there, wasn't there?
Yeah.
Obfuscation.
I can't even pronounce that word.
Yeah.
And I went to the same school as your father.
And it's good. It's very good for Scrabble. It's a lot of points. Now, how many people have heard that word before?
I can't pronounce it, but I've heard it.
Okay. How would you use it? Give me a synonym.
Obscure. Creating confusion.
What?
Creating confusion.
One's causing confusion, but it's also hiding, isn't it? No. I have to begin. It's true. I have to begin with an analogy that'll explain everything. I hope. What analogy? It's called the chocolate bar. Okay. There's chocolate bars, and there's like a really good Swiss chocolate. Somebody's invited for Pesach, from sport, whatever it is. Like there's chocolate bars, and there's like really good ones. So let's say you get a really good chocolate bar, right? Say chocolate or something like that, or Halloween. You have that thing, and you have 4 roommates, right? But you don't want to share it because it's a really good one. So you hide it. And why do you hide it? Because you don't want anyone to find it. There's hiding things because you don't want anyone else to find it. Sometimes you have a good friend, right, who likes chocolate, whatever the context is, and you want to surprise them with a good chocolate bar. They love it. But you don't give it to them. You hide it in their pillow. You hide it in their notebook, in their briefcase. You follow in their lunchbox. I think put a little note on it. But you don't just give them something. You give it over and away. You hide it, and the purpose of hiding it is for people to find it. You understand that idea? It's very human. It's very. That's so logical.
It's the machlokas in the Gemara.
About what?
About matana. Whether you have to give a matana and let a person know
about it
or not know. That's exactly what.
No, but you want them to know it's from you.
I understand, but
it's
you have to tell them.
I'll give you better from you're past that age group, but I deal with 18-year-olds all the time. No, it's at 18, not 80.
Oh, sorry.
When people like way after the time of getting married, they get engaged. And how are we gonna get engaged? Remember, there's a whole shtick nowadays, right? You already have the wedding date, this and that, you already had all your arguments, but now we have to make, how's he gonna do it, you follow? And what's he gonna do, and, but you plan it out, and it's gotta be sort of a surprise kind of thing. If you know how to plan camp, there's always color war, but it's gotta be a surprise, you gotta do some kind of thing. It's human nature, they think they call it shtick. But it's what I'm getting at is sometimes you hide things because you want people to find them. Now, you'll see in a minute where we're going. Now, that's a tool called obfuscation. I'm going to use it to explain something really basic about Megillat Esther, and maybe even by shading. But I want to give it Chumash because it's a tool that Chumash uses. Now, if you have a Chumash, open up chapter 19. In Chumash is over here. There's a bunch of them. It's just in for a couple of minutes. And then I'll give you. Everyone knows the story of Matan Torah? Sefer Shemot chapter 19. Parsha Yitro. It's a famous story. Right before we get the 10 statements, there's a whole back and forth about how we're going to get them, right? Now, you mentioned Matan Torah. Okay? I wouldn't say I don't like that name, but I don't think it's accurate calling it Matan Torah. Because what happens at Har Sinai is not we receive something. This is not the topic of the shir, but it's the topic of Judaism. It's the topic of a lot of misunderstanding. Is that the main event is not receiving the Torah. The main event is entering an obligation and a responsibility to serve God. You understand the difference? It's not that we won a lottery and God gave us this present and says, thank you for this wonderful gift we got. But rather, before we got the 10 statements of the contract, we entered a covenant. Understand? And therefore, what happened was we entered a covenant to be God's people. We decided, I'll take the example I give 18-year-olds. You heard of summer camps? Let me give you a little theory because it's raining and doing that. It's called the tripod theory. You ever heard of it? The tripod theory, the tripod model. When we're discussing how a Jewish child grows up and develops his Judaism, there's a tripod. What are the three legs? The shul, the school, and the home. Make perfect sense? But that's what builds the child's identity. The shul, the school, the home, correct? That's called a tripod. And you need three because that holds it up. But when one leg is weak, the other two have to. And then for when you have a community with a lousy shul, so you need a better school. You have a school, the home, same thing. You have a strong home, okay, good. One of those three have to be strong. The other two can support, but usually one of them is strongest. And what they're realizing, it maybe became a table because summer camp is the fourth leg. that sometimes, because most kids' inspiration comes more from summer camp than thing. And that comes to question. When this question came up in real serious discussion, like 90% of kids going to Jewish schools need financial support, right? So you have to get an application. Is spending money for summer camp considered? No, you say no. If you're spending $30,000 for a vacation, don't ask me for free tuition. You follow? You know the problem. I'm sure you're on boards when you approve them. So the question is, when parents spend money for kids' summer camp, is that a educational need and not motorot? What's motorot in English? Motorot. What? Not excess. Motorot luxury. Is that a luxury thing or is that a necessity? Why did I bring that up? Oh, because building that understanding, those things which build the character of our Jewish education. So the key event in Har Sinai is taking that commitment. You're a member of a community forever in the service of God. So it all begins. We arrive at Har Sinai in chapter 19. God calls Moshe up and tells him, "Let's make a deal, or let's make this proposition." Remember, he says, "Kol tomar lebeit Yaakov begin bnei Yisrael." Look at the first couple of psukim. Gimel Dalet, and God says, "And now look what I did for you. I brought you here with all these miracles. And now, pasuk Hey, what will you do for me? You'll be my special. If you keep my covenant, obey me. Be my skula. Then you'll be a priestly kingdom, a nation separated to serve me." That's the proposition. It's not information, it's a proposition we have to answer. Moshe relays that to the people, and in Pasachet, the people say, "We're going to do it." The people relay and say, "Go," and then Moshe tells God what the people said. Got that? Then we get to Pasuk Tet, okay? Pasuk Tet is key. After we agreed, I forgot my example of summer camp. In summer camp, so you need, for summer camp to work, you need good madrichim. Madrichim are counselors. You need good staff. So what's the best staff? Kids are spending a year in Israel. So every camp director comes to Israel and recruits, right? And they bring pizza, they do each other. Everyone comes, it's not shochat, but listen, there's a meeting, just information. Oh, by the way, there'll be pizza. There'll be, and why would they come to get students? They're giving, what do you call it? Sliders already, like they're just getting the competitions, like the birthday parties in school. Everyone's got to do each other. So what do? They give the whole speech to try to convince you, look what camp did for you when you were in camp, right? Now it's your responsibility. Now do you want to come this summer and dedicate your summer to helping the next generation? That's the situation. Some kids fall for it. Now that's a commitment they're making. They say, okay, I decided I want to find a shidduch, so I'm going to go to. I'm sorry, I want to help. I want to help. I want to be involved. I'm going to take the job. Once I make that commitment, I want to work in camp. What has to happen next? I need a contract. What's in the contract? Who's the two part? You're the boss, so who's the camp, your worker, your responsibilities, what's the purpose, etc. But it's short, it's a very basic contract. But before camp starts, you come a week earlier and do pre-camp and find out how to get your job done, depending on what your job is. If you're a lifeguard, if you're a counselor, if you're a counselor, everyone has their jobs, and you need a more detailed instruction booklet. Got it? So if I want to take that analogy, the camp director coming to try to brainwash kids to enter to work for them. That's chapter 19, what we just read. Everything leading up to, look what we did for you. Now, you want to work for me? And chapter 20, what we call the 10 Commandments, what Chumash calls the 10 Statements, is the contract, which begins with the two parties. I'm your boss. You can't work for anybody else. And if I catch you moonlighting, you're in big trouble, right? And don't carry my name in vain. Now, in theory, why do we do all that? From verse 8, when we said Nasebum, and Moshe relayed that, the next line should be Anochi Hashem Elokecha. We should get the contract. The rest of chapter 19 is complicated, super complicated, but it's about how we're going to receive the contract. Because ideally, how should we receive the contract? From the boss. Okay. Now, has Am Yisrael ever heard God speak before? How do they know? How do they know that what Moshe says is what God's saying? He did Otod. Moshe said this is going to happen. That's why we need so many signs. But now, after Kriyat Yam Suf, they're convinced that when Moshe says something, when Moshe says, "Here's what God said," at least in the meantime they buy it. If it's in there, good. If it's in there, so now the question is, will God talk to the people? So listen to Pasuk Tet. It's really complicated, but listen to Pasuk Tet. What's God tell Moshe Rabbeinu? Vayomer Shem Moshe, Hinei Onochi ba elecha ba'avana. Moshe's talked to God before, and God's talked to Moshe. But now God's going to talk in a special manner to Moshe. God's going to talk to Moshe in the thickness of a cloud. Why? Ba'avur Ishma am b'dabrima. So that what? So the people will overhear when I talk to you. Got it? God's going to talk to Moshe, but not like before. God's going to talk to Moshe in a setting where the people overhear God talking. You ever hear people talking in a different room? So you know they're talking. You can't understand the words, but you know they're talking. And when someone comes out of the meeting and says, "What did he say?" You believe that's what they said because you know they talk. Got that? So, what's that mean? They'll believe in. What do you mean they'll believe in Moshe? This is before. There's no mitzvah to believe in Moshe. To believe that when Moshe said, God said it, God really said it. I'll make fun of modern Orthodox. If God said it, we keep it. If the rabbis make it up, we pick and choose. In general, the level, that was a problem because we stopped saying the 10 Commandments in davening. You know that? The original custom, Shema came with the 10 Commandments. That was a big thing. But people thought Shema was only from, only 10 Commandments from God, and the rest from Moshe. So they'll be so important they won't keep anything else. So that's the machloket. You stand up for them or not? The same argument. Now back to there. So keep reading. God Got that? So that's God's plan, that he'll transmit the contract in what manner? He'll talk to Moshe in a manner that the people are sure that God's talking to Moshe. When Moshe comes out of the cloud and says, here's what God said, they'll believe that God said it. Okay? Make sense? Now, look at 9 3/4. What's 9 3/4? In Pasuk Tet, Rabbi? Yeah, but no. What's at 9 3/4 in the Pasuk? Listen carefully. Vayaged Moshe et El Shem. What's wrong?
He already told
He already told them that. So this has to relate to the first part of chapter, first time. What should Moshe do? Moshe should tell the people God's plan. God's plan. Instead, Moshe tells God what the people said. But what's missing? We don't know what God told Moshe.
What the
Moshe
people
told
told,
the people.
what the people told.
We don't know what the people told Moshe, which Moshe told God. You understand?
But
There's-
isn't that pasuk 10?
No. That Ebenezer says that, so it's not bad. Everyone disagrees with Ebenezer because he says by Vayaged, Vayeshev, but that's not hard of hearing. It's formal, but this is something new. But every other parshan holds that there's 20 seconds missing at 9 3/4. How come I say 20 seconds? I was laughing.
That was next.
Yeah. Remember, someone cut the tape. Don't you remember? You're too young, but you guys remember. Some people. Okay. Now, there's something missing at 9 3/4. Got my point? What's missing? What the people said in response to God's plan. So we'll call that plan A. There's a plan, God's original plan to transmit the Dibrot through a cloud, through the agency of Moshe, but in a buffered encounter. That's a good word. That was God's plan. Moshe must have told that to the people. The people must have responded. And Moshe told the people what Moshe told God what the people responded. But what's missing? It's missing. We'll see. Rashi will deal with it in a minute. Chazal are going to play Jeopardy. I've seen that fun. We don't know what the people said. We know God's response to what the people said. Because how did God respond? In Pasuk Yud. V'yomer Hashem el Moshe. What's Hashem tell Moshe? Like, go to the people. V'kidashtam hayom ha'machar. V'kidashtam otam. Go people. Get ready tomorrow. Get all ready. Erev Shabbos. Okay? And wash your laundry. Get you ready. Be prepared. Okay. Be prepared for what day? For day 3. Because what's going to happen on day 3? Yered Hashem. What's it say? Le'inei kol ha'am har Sinai. 3 days preparation. How's the encounter going to be? Direct. God's going to come in the sight of the people on Har Sinai. That's not a cloud anymore, is it? You understand the difference? Just for the sake of reference, God's original plan is plan A, and the people are asking for plan B. They want a more direct encounter. Yeah?
I was going to ask you, what did Moshe say to God in the end of Pasuk Tet that he didn't say to him at the end of Pasuk Chet?
Something different.
What was that?
That's exactly the question. That's exactly the question. Right on the mark. Perfect. In other words, it should be there. It's not there. It's hiding. I will show you in a minute. It's hiding, but you can figure it out. That's what Chazal did. How did they figure it out? The people must have asked, how do we wash our clothes? No, I'm joking. What are the people asking? If God's answer is be prepared, in 3 days' time, you can actually encounter God directly. They must have asked, we don't want the buffer. Right. We want the real thing. Got it? Right. Now, you have Rashi with you?
Yeah.
Okay.
In fact, what they said.
It doesn't say what they said, but we can figure it out. No, can't we know what they said? Can't we know what they said?
Answer
In
the question.
Chumash knows how to be clear. Our commitment, that's explicit.
Right, Rashi's good because he splits the days. If you look at Rashi.
Yeah, Rashi has to stretch 6 days, 3 days into 6 days. Yeah.
6 days.
Okay,
He
now,
splits the day.
Yeah.
He's able to.
Here, let's pass this around.
Don't we know from Perek Chaf though that this is what happened after the Aseret Dibrot? In other words, this fills it in at the end. They say, you know what, we don't want to hear this anymore. You.
Yeah, if we have time, we'll go there. Yeah. Then we won't get to the Megillah, but it's okay. If it's something better.
He just tells them that they want to hear from you.
So listen,
Isn't that it?
I want to show you how Chazal understood it, and they're doing a very careful read. Everyone have? We got plenty. There's plenty of copies. You have everyone have? You have 2? Okay, good. Okay, this will leave them there. Good. Now, Look at Rashi. I have Rashi here on the source sheet. You see that? You can Rashi's in our scroll there also, but smaller print. That makes it big. Okay. Listen to what Rashi says on 19:9. Yes, why am I calling it 9 3/4? Something's there, but you can't see it. Why can't you see it? Because you're a muggle. See that she understands because she's younger. Okay. But if you're a wizard, you can figure it out. You don't know Harry Potter? That's where that's the train station that you can't.
Oh, no.
What's
I
that?
understand what you're talking about.
Yeah. A muggle can't see it, but a wizard can see it.
Did you know that?
If you don't know
Yes,
Harry Potter,
I said it
I'm sorry.
before.
I told you, I teach 18-year-olds all the time, so. But my students I get older every year, and my students stay the same age. So I try to keep up with them. Now, what's Rashi say? Divrei ha'am. Shuval davar zeh. What do the people say? In response to this plan, got it? Shamati mehem shortzaram nishmo mimcha. In response to this plan of the buffer cloud, right? They said, we want to hear from you, from God. Okay? I can't compare getting a message with an SMS or what do you call it, from the king as hearing it directly from the king himself. That's one midrash he quotes. The second approach is there's 2 midrashim, and he brings them both together. We want to see our king. Now, how did Chazal understand that? Because of God's response, because they play Jeopardy. You with me?
Yeah.
No. So it's a legitimate explanation, but what? Haikar chaser min hasefer. In 9 3/4, the main response is missing, but what is it that people wanted? They wanted that direct encounter with God. Now, does it happen? Well, let's see. Did they prepare for 3 days? Sure do. And there's what do you call it? There's all preparation. Don't touch the mountain for 3 days. Everything's set. And wait till you hear the shofar blowing. Just look at the end of Pasuk, Tedvav. No, get ready. And then this Bimshoch at the end of I'm sorry, the Pasuk end of Yudimol. He says, quarter up the mountain. Bimshoch hayovel hemi yadu bahar. When you hear a loud shofar blowing, then it's okay to go up. Where's that? The end of Yudalit? Then David Gimel, right?
No.
It's cordon off the mountain. Anyone touching the mountain, throw a rock at them, shoot an arrow at them, keep them off. Animals, no one's on the mountain. It's like the dining room Erev Pesach. Once it's ready, no one goes near it until the Seder. You follow? And that's anticipation. When you hear the shofar blowing, then we go up and meet God and encounter God. Understand? Now, now skip to Pasuk Tetzayin. It's day 3, correct? And now we have the loud shofar blowing. Just kolot to brakim banan kevir alahar. And what should happen now? They should hear Anochi Hashem Elokecha. Instead, they chicken out, right? Because of this pasuk, we have a minhag of staying up all night on Shavuos because they said they slept in. Remember that midrash? And that's why we eat cheesecake. Listen to guest speakers mostly. Now, instead of learning. Now back to so say 3 day chicken out. What should Moshe do? You invited this guy, so he goes to the door, he goes to the camp. Moshe takes it from the camp and brings it back to the mountain, and we start up again. Like that? And Pasuk Yefet, the mountain starts rocking and shaking. Because God came down in fire. And the smoke starts pillaring up. Okay? And we're ready now for what? For God to speak. And now look at Pasuk Yotet. What happened? That's the loud shofar blowing, got it? We're ready. And what happens instead? Moshe Yedaber. Moshe would speak. As Moshe would speak, God would amplify his voice. So he would answer him with a call. But according to the simple reading, this is Moshe telling the people that he brought on behalf of God. And we get them quoted later on. I'm explaining how Rashi explains. Now, listen to what Rashi says. What is it that Moshe would, remember it says Moshe Yedaber. What is Moshe saying to the people? Listen to what Rashi says now in 1919. See that? Moshe Yedaber. When Moshe would tell the people, we'll see that, the 10 commandments, 8 commandments. What's Rashi assuming? Rashi's assuming that Moshe spoke the last 8, but not the first 2. You learned that in kindergarten, didn't you? Remember Torah Tzivalenu Moshe, Torah 6:11? And the first 2 is that's how we get to 6:13, in case you didn't know. For the restaurant. Did they say that restaurant? Where's that? Oh, that's in Stanford. Where's 6:13? It's not too far away, is it? Depending on traffic. But 6:13, remember?
No, because the first 2 are in first person.
No, didn't say that. That's exactly the next point. How did Chazal know that the first 2 were said directly? Because they're in first person.
That's how Rashi.
Chazal know that. Rashi's quoting Chazal. Rashi is the best teacher. Rashi has very few commentators on his own. His choosing what to bring in, what not to bring in, and being short, right to the point. That's his greatness.
The Pshat.
He said at the Pshat level, what's he saying? It doesn't say what Rashi says here. It doesn't say in the text. But Rashi is saying in verse 19, when Moshe would speak the 10 Commandments, when Moshe would speak, he was speaking the last 8, but the first 2 they heard directly from God. Got that? So basically, what happened, according to Rashi, right, they heard the first 2 directly from God on that plan B, and then they must have gotten scared. Big Moshe, we don't want to hear from God anymore, and therefore the last 8 Moshe told them, and that's why the first 2 are in first person, and the last 8 are in third person. Got that? Lo tisad Shem Hashem Elokecha Lashav, that's in third person. That's Rashi Shita. Got it? Now, it doesn't say that, but you can uncover it. You can. There's enough information for you to figure it out. Yeah.
I don't know if this is related, but the first go around, Pasuk Chet or Zion.
Yeah.
Moshe didn't speak directly to the people either. He spoke to the Zakanim.
Oh yeah, exactly. There's a hierarchy. He speaks to the counselors, and the counselors talk to the campers. But the campers come back, and there's a what do you call it, a hierarchy system. But basically, the entire nation ratifies it. He tells his kid in because he can't tell everybody because they don't have microphones. Yeah. So that's why Rashi says, how can Moshe say that he broke to everybody? Because God amplifies his voice. That's exactly the Rashi. Yeah. So the event Ella, an amplifier in Hebrew nowadays is called a magber. Because of this Rashi.
On the motion, they did that bear for the.
As Moshe, it's present perfect. Yeah, as Moshe would speak.
That's supposed to be able to give it.
Yeah, no, if Moshe would speak, God would answer his voice with a. It's a bit of a kvetch, but I'm just showing that's how they explain it. Now it's missing. But what caused the change? Yeah. And there's a footnote at the end of chapter 20 to the 10 Commandments about what caused it, because in verse 15, chapter 20, it says the people heard the Kolot and Brokim,
Right.
and they tell Moshe Rabbeinu, we don't want to hear from God. Enough, we got the point. Enough is enough. We want to hear from you.
But that's how you can piece it together. You have to go to the end.
You got to cut and paste. Yeah. Now, it's doable, but boy, it's confusing, isn't it?
Very.
Right.
Especially if
That's
you're
my
on the
point.
end of Mishpat.
Now, the question is Chumash doing this to confuse you, or does Chumash want you to go on that journey? You follow? That's my point.
Both.
Obfuscation. You want to be enticed to figure it out, but I want to say something much better. I'm assuming, unless it's either it's poorly written, but it's a masterpiece when you look at it. Which means what I call plan B, in order that the reader uncovers it through a careful reading of the text. Now, Rashi is consistent. You know what? The original request for plan, when I say plan B, means the direct encounter. The original request of plan B in chapter 19 is mysteriously missing. That's the 20 seconds. That's got it. The text mysteriously left out the people's request here of plan B. I can deduce it, but doesn't say it. And when plan B happened, it's also missing. You follow? That's consistent. In other words, what's being hidden? The request for the direct encounter and the direct encounter happening.
But you only find it out at the end, which is typical. Because you only realize it when you get to the end of the story. Then you.
What's the end of the story?
In Parachav.
But you don't know when that happened.
No, of course you know when it happened. Because you have to piece it together with what happened, exactly what.
Yeah,
with
yeah,
the-
but
with
you can go in
puzzle
20
that
different
you are
directions.
putting together.
There's 5 different opinions on what happened at the end of the
Okay,
day.
but if you go according to your plan A and plan B,
Now,
right, that's how it
now,
fits.
I want to show you that D is just as confusing. It just is in sync with J. I'm just showing. Got it? The Dvarim has the same obfuscation. Why? Just for the fun of it. Go to Parak Hey Dvarim, where you have the 10 Commandments repeated in the beginning of Moses' speech. Remember, Moshe gathers the people. What page is chapter 5?
970.
Yeah, but 970. Where Moshe gathers the people together, does a listen, he's about to start this big speech. You have to keep it. Said this speech is part of the pasuk bet. Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem our boss. We made a covenant with him at Har Sinai. It wasn't just with your parents; it was with you. That's the Gimel. Now, he's going to explain what that brit was, starting in pasuk Vav with the 10 Commandments. But listen to pasuk Dalet. How did God speak to you? Panim b'fanim. Which means we encounter God directly. But look at pasuk Hey. I was a middleman in the buffer encounter. Why? Because you got afraid of the fire and you didn't come up the mountains. Right? So it's pasuk Dalet, the 10 Commandments, and pasuk Hey after 10 Commandments is pasuk Dalet, panim b'fanim. The first two, and pasuk Hey the last day, or it's pasuk Dalet, God's original plan. And then they didn't hear anything from God because they got scared right away. That's what, by the way, it's where Ramban holds. Okay, I don't want to get all the shitot. Also, I'm trying to show you that even in Dvarim, it just says hidden. Got it? Mm-hmm. Now go back to Shemot. Look at the first 5 of the 10 Commandments. Yeah. Who's God talking to? But when God talks to Moshe, what's Moshe? Vaydaber Hashem Moshe lemor. Vaydaber Hashem Moshe v'Aaron lemor. Vaydaber Moshe. What's it say? Vaydaber Elohim. Lemor. What's missing? Who's he talking to? The only time. What's missing? Is he talking this to Moshe or to all the people? And what's Chumash doing again? It's not confusing you. He wants you to figure it out now. Yeah. Now, I want to claim that's technical. I want to claim the meaning of it. And this is what gets to the What's Chumash doing? The media is the message. I'll try to explain what I mean. Is that in real life, remember Har Sinai is an eternal event? It's timeless. That's why there's no date, no thing. It's just it's a Bayom Hazeh. We're always living that Har Sinai experience. Now, that search for that close encounter with God is elusive. It's difficult, right? But it's something to strive for. But you only find God if you look for him. If you look for God, I can't forget what you're allowed to say anymore. But it's difficult to find God because God's hidden. You can find God and you can have a close encounter with God. But if you don't search for it, if you don't search for God, you won't find it. That's my point. And therefore, what's hiding here? That plan B, that direct encounter, which the people seems like they asked for it, but we're hiding the request. But when you study this text carefully and search for that plan B, you'll find it. But if you don't search for it, you won't find it. Okay, that's my add-on. Got it? And I think if that's author's intent, if that's what Chumash is doing, then it's not just they're giving you a puzzle to figure out. So you say, I figured out the puzzle. Well, I understand that parsha now. It's teaching you a way of life of how to find God in your life. That requires searching. Anyone who knows Hasidus, anyone who knows just human life, and the biggest punishment for not having a relationship with God is not having that relationship. Listen, if you don't, I won't say the word chiloni because I mean it's not these two, but I want to be the biggest danger of not having God in your life, the biggest punishment is not having God in your life. Now back to so that's I've defined obfuscation. I can bring you lots of examples, but that's I think the best example. Now, what's Esther hiding? Why? I think it was big machloket whether Megillat Esther should be part of the canon. Give me a good reason why we should not include it.
Outside of Israel.
There's no God. And every book in the Bible is about our relationship with God. So why would we include a fairy tale, a beautiful story, right? If God's missing, in fact, I shouldn't put it in wine because God's not there, correct? If you know the Septuagint and the Greek translations of God's everywhere. Now the question was, he dead in the original and the rabbis took it out, or the Septuagint in the Greek translation, they figured the people with Alexandria, couldn't figure it out on their own, so they had had the art scroll version. You understand my point? No, that's a historical question. But the Megillah that we have in our Tanakh is missing God's name. Got that? Now, if you were writing that story, wouldn't you put God in? No. Is the author doing that because is he saying God's not involved? What's the author want you to do? Look for God.
It's more of like a hidden presence.
He said. But that style of writing is the message of the Megillah. Why? Because when you're living in exile and you're living Jewish history and God appears to be hidden, correct? He's there, but you don't see him. But if you don't look for him, you won't find him. Right? And the Megillah is telling you God's behind the scenes, but he's hidden. To the point that the heroine of the story, her name was really Hadassah. But for some reason, we changed her name to Esther. Just say her name is Esther, or just call her Hadassah. Why the two names? But that's already alluding. Now, I'm going to introduce now breadcrumbs. You know what breadcrumbs are? Right, yeah. When you hide something, I need to leave enough clues that I'm not pulling teeth. You follow? It's not just one of these gematrias, or Shabbos Spartaras, where I want something and I force it into. You say whatever you want, and this here's this Vayomer, there's this Vayomer. Oh, I must be connected. You ever see that? I call that Vayomer. Not every time you have the same word. Now, if one story has Vayit Mahama, and one other says Vayit Mahama, whoa, you follow? That's a smoking gun. Especially when the word shouldn't be there, and you have a strange word. That's that's the storm story in Mitzrayim. Those are classic. Those are intentional. But what I'm claiming is that the author began with Esther is purposely hiding God in the story, not just to make it fun to search for God, but that's the message of the Megillah, to look for the hand of God in history, especially in exile where God's presence is less felt, and you might think he's not there, but he is there, but he's hidden. That's what's called in Kabbalah called Nistar. And when you look in depth, the opposite of Nistar is Nigla. Har Sinai is the example of Nigla, isn't it? And that's why the Ramban, on the whole Mishkan stuff, is that the presence of God that was so obvious in Har Sinai is going to be hidden now in the Mishkan. That's what he talks about in the beginning of Truma. And therefore, we have God dwells in the Mishkan, and the symbol of God is what? Is the Aron. But what do we do to symbolize that idea that God's hidden? Our symbol of God is covered. What's that covering called? Mishkan. The Mishkan Taseh, the name Mishkan really means the covering. The Mishkan Taseh, remember from, because it's a general name and a specific name. But every religion has a symbol of God and an altar in front of it. That's how people worship the gods. Our symbol of God, well, our tried an ego, didn't work very good, got out of hand. But we need some symbol of God. So God says, okay, you can have a Mishkan, and your symbol of God is the contract, the Aron. But so you don't daven after Kotel. So you daven after Kotel, not to the Kotel. She daven, so the Aron's going to represent it, but I don't want you davening to it. I'm going to hide. I'm going to cover the symbol of God. I know it's there, but I can't see it. I'm saying the imagery of the Mishkan is giving the same message. And there's such an accent on the covering and the covering and the covering. Okay? Everything's covered and covered and covered and guarded. But that's the idea. You have the symbol of God, but I want to make sure that doesn't become a God. And therefore I cover it, I hide it. What? What? Yeah. And they're also covered, yeah. Now let's go back to our breadcrumbs. If the author's hiding God, I need to leave enough hints that he should be there, right? So now we have to talk about other kind of breadcrumbs besides God's name. Like, remember, Im hachrish tachrish yivei tzazot, rebach basat havul hayudim. It should say, God will bring someone else. Mimakom acher. Just say God. Unless in Chumash, maybe the word makom represents God sometimes. In a Shiva house, do you see Hamakom Yinachem Etchem? What's that referring to? What's Hamakom? Hashem or Yerushalayim? You never discussed that? Ask your local rabbi. It's a great machloket. It can mean it depends how you understand Hamakom Yishivkar Hashem. And Yaakov Eifgav Hamakom. Makom is a big. It's a big theme in Chumash, but not for now. Now we go down. You can put your Chumashim away. You finish the Chumash. You can just take your source sheet. Go to fall asleep. I don't want to do too much Zionism here. I don't want to get in trouble. But I want to. I'm sure we've done this overall topic before, but I want to get to the obfuscation point. Okay, and I want to show you like a breadcrumb that you see the author is up to something. Got it? Again, I'll bring the example from Animal Farm, which you all know the book. Does Animal Farm say in the introduction, oh, read about the Russian Revolution and the Bolsheviks, etc., and then you appreciate my book? Or he just cites a really cool story about animals, like coming with this great idea that everyone's thinking. And what's he hoping? Now, the message is much stronger. Almost all theater, and isn't that what theater is about? You put on a play, and hey, that's me. That's Scrooge. That's Scrooge. Isn't when you see a good play, right? The people are supposed to say, "Oh, maybe I don't see me in that. I see my neighbor in that thing. Or I see, the guy I do like or don't like." But you don't say this is that. You do it in a way that people realize are their own. When you uncover something on your own, it sticks with you. It's you can identify with it more. So, when you study Megillat Esther, the question is, what do you have to take into consideration? Assuming now that the author has, it's a book of prophecy, not prophecy, but it's in the canon. It has to do with our relationship with God. Assuming that, I'm also assuming now that the author is hiding the main message in a manner that he wants the reader to figure it out. So in order for the reader to figure out the message, I have to leave enough breadcrumbs. Got my point? Now, what's if you know what our regular Megillah is, what's like the main word in every Megillah, every top of every line? Hamelech, right? And guess what Chazal say? Sometimes Hamelech is Hamelech Achashverosh. Sometimes Hamelech is going to be in a hidden way. Got it? Now that's a prophetic trick, isn't it? Using the same word, but alluding to, Mihu Melech, who's the real Melech behind the scene. Now, Hamelech Achashverosh, for sure, it's the thing, but Hamelech, that's always, could be either way. I'll bring a couple examples. So, everyone knows that God is involved in saving us, isn't he? That's for sure. That's the message. The question is God also involved in almost destroying us? Understand the difference? It's very basic in Tefillah, where a lot of us assume that droughts, famines, epidemics, wars, they happen by chance. That's nature. That's the way things. That's rolling dice. But if we're affected by it, what can we do? Oh, luckily we have protection with this amazing God who created everything, and because He created the system, He has protection. He can get involved. And if we ask Him nicely, or even scream a little bit, what might happen? Yeah, we turn to God because He can help us. So we turn to God for Yeshua, right? For help. But what caused the problem? That's by chance. That it. If you follow the prophets, it's exactly the opposite. If we say so in Shema. On a national, not on an individual level, on a national level. If there is a calamity, a drought, a famine, a war, then we'll see in a minute. But if any type of problem like that, according to the Nevi'im, according to Chumash, that's a wake-up call sent by God because something's wrong. Something's rotten, not in Denmark, but in Jerusalem. Something's wrong with the people. And He sent a wake-up call. And when things that happen, we don't pray, say, God save us. We pray to God, help us understand what we did wrong. That's why we gather in the temple or in shul to pray, to hear the rabbi's speech, to get guidance, to try to understand who's to blame for all this. Of course, it's always somebody else. It's always other people doing things wrong. And or maybe some people actually take responsibility, but that it's a little too much ask for people. But we're supposed to do tshuva, got it? And if we do proper tshuva, that gives God a reason to take away the trouble. And that's Shlomo Melech says explicitly in Sefer Malachim. All the Leibtag talk about that. That's it's a little harsh, but that's pshat. Maybe pshat's wrong. Maybe we need mazel. Maybe for God to be on our side, we need good luck. You can say mazel tov. You get God on your side, or maybe you can say magic letters and do seances and do riches, and that would get God on your side. Now, you can do those things that have meaning, and that can inspire you to be a better person. That's something else. But when you turn Judaism to a religion, it becomes a disaster. But that's an important topic, but not for now. No, why to bring it down? Because the question is, of course, we want to see God's hand in our salvation. Is God's hand also in our almost destruction? We're this close to being wiped out. Now, to do that, you have to understand the setting. And therefore, the Megillah is happening after the first temple was destroyed. Is it before or after the second temple was built? No, but maybe but the events of Megillah, this Achashverosh is the Persian king before the temple was built or after the temple was built? The first temple was destroyed. The second temple is after the first temple, but is Achashverosh, he's a Persian king, right? Is the story of Megillah happening when the temple is already rebuilt in Jerusalem or before it's rebuilt?
Already. No, it's not. It is straightforward. Achashverosh is the father of Koresh. The Koresh is the title.
No. Koresh is the first Persian king. Point to everybody.
So Achashverosh came after.
There's a meat king, Achashverosh ben Dariah. That's something else. But that's in Daniel, but he's much earlier. That's not Melech Baras, it's Melech Madai. But no, I know I was going to get both answers because it's a massive machloket.
Yeah,
But Mordechai
It's
was
the-
part
it's
of
the
the
missing
Sanhedrin.
years.
Wasn't Mordechai part of the Sanhedrin?
Yeah, but no.
That was
Listen,
part of the.
okay. I need a 5-hour share
Right.
to put it all together. I'm staying away from that. But it's really confusing. Those are all midrashim which are beautiful, but they're all, if you don't understand where they're coming from and how they came about, you get super confused. Most people are. Now, let's just give you the two opinions in general. There's a rabbinic word called Seder Olam, where we make these dates and we crunch all the years, whatever it is, for good reasons. But according to Seder Olam, it's a midrashic history. They claim there's only 3 Persian kings. Koresh was the first one. Daryabesh, who is our Takshasta, is the last one. And Achashverosh is the middle one. Got it? And the Megillah happens after Koresh said the Jews can go back and build, but before it's built in the time of Daryabesh. Understand? That's right, and he fits right there in the middle. Historically, it's Baba Moses. You follow? It's a beautiful midrash, and there's a good reason for it. Somehow, Jewish history turned the midrash into history. That's a lecture. You follow? That needs 5 hours. I can do it, but if I'm a 5-hour class, more than happy. It's one of my favorite topics, but it's super confusing. But it's doable, but not for today. When you look at outside history, because even Greek historians, like Herodotus writes about the Greek people, they've been fighting for a long time. But the Greeks wrote their own history. They have burial tombs of their kings. They have lists of kings because all the dates are to their kings. So there's like 200 years of Persian kings. There's Cyrus, there's Darius, there's Cambyses, there's the second, the fourth, the fifth, the third. There's Artaxerxes, there's Xerxes, the first, the second, the third. It's real confusing, but there's lots of them. But it's more than 3. You follow?
No.
Wait, what?
There's Seymour.
Yeah. Well, again, why Chazal do that? A long story. It's understandable, but confusing. Now, if you follow out Chazal's history, Achashverosh is before the temple was built. If you follow real history, it's the generation right after it's built. Okay? Now, God sent us into exile for rehab, correct? That's so. In source number 3, called we'll do this in light of Haggai and Sarah. in Ezra chapter 1, which I'm sure you're familiar with, God gives the Jews the right to come, Koresh, I'm sorry, thanks to God, according to the text, inspires Koresh to allow all the ethnic groups to go back and build the temples, including the Jews. And the prophecy says, that's not Koresh, that's God. That's in Deuteronomy. Say, hold on to it. Now, what's important for our shir is pasuk Zayin. When Koresh allowed the Jews to go back from the Persian Empire to rebuild the temple, it's a gesture of kindness. What's he do? He takes out, and Melech Koresh took out the kelim of the Beit HaMikdash from Nebuchadnezzar's palace, who stole them, and he takes them out from Nebuchadnezzar's palace, gives them to the Jews, to Sheshbatzar and Zerubbabel, to bring back to Jerusalem to use in the rebuilt temple. Got it? To bring it back and rebuild the temple. And then pray for me. Give me a Mishaberach or Shabbos. And you be good to me. I'll be good. You be a good person, citizen. We're in charge. You be good citizens, and we can have autonomy. So, where the kelim of the Beit HaMikdash? According to everybody, before Achashverosh, in Yerushalayim. Now, God was hoping, and it should be because Yirmiyahu said after 70 years, Babel's going to fall, and I'll give you the ability to return if you want to return. That's what he says in chapter 29. When they're over, if you call out to me, and you'll look after me, when we catch them, if you search for me, I'll be there for you. God didn't say I'm going to bring you back after 7 years. After 7 years, I give you the opportunity to return. And sure enough, the opportunity comes up. And guess how many people make Aliyah? A couple of Kibaniks, a couple, Shugoyim, a couple things. But most of the people stay in, I'll say Brooklyn, I won't say Argentina. I won't say Westchester. No. And then there's a building, then what happens? They start working on it and there's a building freeze. There's a Mamsh and Intifada starting because we come back and there's other people here. They don't like these Jews coming. These, Mitachomim, and they're taking on people's land. They're colonialists. They complain to the UN. There's a thing. They write letters back and forth. It's all in the book of Esther. And they get a building freeze for 18 years. And then there's a new king in Persia, Darius the Great. No relation to Cyrus the Great. Although they have the same last name. Alexander gives the same last name. Yeah. It gets so boring that we get the Turks, throw them in the Magnificent. Greece not good enough anymore. It's like that more we get,
Arabic is more flowery.
Yeah. So in short, there's an opportunity to return. The answer really isn't. The nation doesn't answer the call, and logically, God would be very upset. Wouldn't he be? If you did all these somersaults to bring the Jews back, and you brought this new king and you play with the election, everything. What else do you want God to do? Come down and fire, with a magical way, and bring you all back with a magic carpet? Or is he giving you enough hints? Got it? But sure enough, most people don't come back. If you were God, would you be upset? Yeah, I thought it would be like, let's say you're a king, okay? And you just won re-election, okay? And you're, and you're making a big party, inviting all the dignitaries around the globe to come and celebrate. You're the greatest king of all, okay? And you have a big celebration, everyone's invited, and you have a trophy wife, okay? And you call upon your trophy wife to come show off how beautiful she is to the people gathered. Imagine if she says, I'm not coming. Who's gonna look bad? That's real embarrassment to the king. Is he gonna keep her? He's gonna dump her, right? You understand the analogy, maybe? No, that's a question. First of all, what's that story doing in the Megillah? No, nothing has to do with American, not American politics. What's it doing in the Megillah? The question is, that just a cute story in the beginning? Remember what they said, how come the king gets so angry? What Vashti did was not just for the king. What would everyone else do? There'll be no authority anywhere. This would be a disaster to the whole Persian Empire because of what Vashti did, right? Good. If Vashti did that, what do you want other people to do? Remember? Everyone will be a disaster. Therefore, we got to do something drastic. Now, is that alluding possibly to God and the Jewish people? Or it could be just, it could be just a little Zionistic work. No. You'll never know for sure because everything's hidden. Remember V'kilim V'kilim Shunim? Did we have the minhag to say that? What did Chazal say? There was that big party. Right. Was what?
Temple.
The kids in the basement. Now, shot, they were long gone. Right. And silver shot. Oh, come on! Like they got enough. If you know Persian history, they don't need our They're plenty wealthy without it. You ever go to the Bible has a museum, or you ever see the archaeology? They were super rich. Now, but using kelim at Beit HaMikdash is a problem, is showing a lack of respect for the Beit HaMikdash. So using kelim at Beit that's a misdemeanor. But having an opportunity to rebuild it and not taking the opportunity, that's a felony. Understand the difference? So is that an illusion? Now, what do? We do it b'lashon eicha, don't we? They're onto something. Then one joke. Why did the Misnagdim start that minhag of to read it like eicha? You know why? So they have a little simcha on. Their favorite holiday is Tisha B'Av, isn't it? They love being sad, melancholy, you know what I'm saying? So to give a little simcha from Misnagdim, they give them a little, a couple lines of Tisha B'Av.
Halalahu,
Yeah.
the Dashna.
Yeah, that's Rosh Hashanah already.
Yeah, that's another.
Who's Hamelech?
Yeah.
The word Hamelech. So I'll give an example in a minute. Actually, flip the page over. This first here in B, and not B, in C. Okay. Haman's opening sign to the request, right? See in C on the back side. Okay, who's the king? Okay. There's one nation scattered all over the place, okay? In all the kingdoms, in all the states of the kingdom. But that they should not become their laws different than any other nation. So, but that they don't keep, everyone else's laws, and the king should allow them to be kept. Who's he talking about? Now, who's the melech? Is the melech God? And it's talking about. Is this God talking about the Jewish people that it's not worth keeping them? Or is that Haman really talking? You see the double voice? So when Chazal say the Hamelech can be God, and when usually it's Hamelech is God and Hamelech Achashverosh is Achashverosh, if it's perfectly with that idea. But again, we're hiding it. Now, the last thing I want to do is already, I'm sorry, also, I'll get the issue with you in a minute. I'll finish up the rest quickly. I want to jump into the time period of Darius. In year 2 of Darius, they break ground on the temple. In year 6, they finish. You remember that? That's when the Second Temple begins. 516 BC, around there. That's when it's finally put together. After they start building, before it's finished, in year 4, because year 2 they break ground, year 6 is finished. In the middle of the building process, there's a delegation from Babylonia that comes to Jerusalem with a big question for the prophet Zechariah. It's Zechariah chapter 7 and 8. So it's famous. We're quoting part of it. Okay. What's the big question? They hear news, hey, the temple's being built. They're all excited. And what's the big question now? For the last 7 years, they've been fasting on Tisha B'Av. What do they want to know? Should we continue? Do we continue fasting? Got it? Good question. Because they're planning summer camp. Right? And do we have to do instructional swimming on the 9 days, or are we going to have fun? No? We have to get somebody to make a seal so we can have funny shakes. There's real big, it makes a big difference on her Jewish life if the temple's going to be built. They want to know what's good. It's really important for them. Now, Zechariah gives him a great answer. You know what he tells him? He says, don't ask God the Rabbanans, ask God the Oraita. Meaning that you guys decided to fast. God didn't say you fast on Tisha B'Av. You decided. That's your problem. He says, you're not fasting to remember what happened. Fast to remember why it happened. And if you want to know what God wants you to do, if you want to fast, that's your problem. What God wants you to do is to remember why it was destroyed. And he gives a whole speech, remind why it was destroyed. You were unjust, you had a corrupt society, your rabbis were corrupt, your society was corrupt, you didn't take care of the poor and the needy, you flaunted your wealth, you were lying and cheating. And that's God and claiming to be God's people. You can read all the Nevi'im. And God says, remember Isaiah says, don't give me that bull. Remember, love me the most. Remember, it says, I don't want your animals. Mm-hmm. You didn't get my joke. I did. Don't get that. It wasn't funny. Okay. But that's the main thing. And God sent us out, hoping we'd recover, learn better. So he says, if you want to remember something, remember why it happened, not what happened. And if you want to know, and they want to know, is this is this gonna work, this temple? Is it working? He says, it's not up to me, it's up to you. That's what God says. Don't ask me, ask yourselves. I'm giving you the opportunity, but you can make it happen if you remain worthy of the second temple. And don't make the same mistakes as the first temple. And if it wasn't clear enough, at the very end of the Nebuah, he says as follows. Remember that there were, not just Tishba, there were all 4 fast days. It started at the end of Rishon. Remember the events. Pasuk on back page, stop, where it says, in response to the question, do we need to continue fasting? There's Elad Mishur Tasu. What's he saying? Dabru, and back, listen to the words. Ish et Re'ehu. You ever heard that before? Ish et Re'ehu? Ish et Achiv, got it? Ish et Re'ehu? Okay. No, it's, speak truthfully one to each other. Emet mishpat shon shivtu b'sharichem. Have truth and justice in your gates where you judge people. Okay. Rishet ra'at Re'ehu. Here we go again. No, don't be, I'm just don't be mediocre. But don't, what's he up to? What's he up to? Don't live that whole life of everyone's out to get you and everyone's out this and that. Like that. Instead, don't think that way. It's destructive. Ushvat check out Tavu, quit lying and loving and tricking this guy and that guy. Okay. That's what God hates, he says. Now, if you want this to work, build a just, kind society. It's caring and truthful. And mention that. Now, then he says, about fasting, more. Kol Hashem. The 4 fast days basically are going to be what? Are going to be l'sason l'simcha l'modim tovim, v'met v'shal havu. The 4 fast days can become holidays on one condition. And met v'shalom havu. Remember those words? And met v'shalom. It's a summary of his whole 2 chapters, chapters 7 and 8. You can read the whole thing later for homework. Let me give you the thing. So I want to show you the biggest breadcrumb. It's what do you call it? It's more than a breadcrumb. It's a bagel. Why a bagel? Because it's got a hole in it. Okay, it's good, but there's holes in the theory, but it's a good analogy. Then he says as follows: not only are the fasting from holidays, it's going to be so great. That's Jerusalem will be great again. Things will be awesome. It'll be so good that other nations are going to come from far away to come and get guidance in this house and skip the Pasach Habet. Ubo amin rabim, great nations and people are going to come. They'll come to Jerusalem for guidance. To turn to God. And it'll be so crowded in Jerusalem with non-Jews coming for the guidance of the Jewish people, that there'll be, at that time, there'll be 10 people from other nations waiting in line in Jerusalem in the temple for the guidance from an Ish Yehudi. Because we heard about God's with you, we want to learn from you. We start it there, or whatever, not start it there. We want to be inspired by you. You follow? You're doing such a good job. That's how good it'll be in Jerusalem. That's Zechariah's great hope. Not just the Jews will return, but Jews will be here and will act in a way that sanctifies God and will have an impact on humankind. That's it. That's Isaiah's goal. That's the Chumash's goal. We'll talk about it later. Now, that's the last Nebuah Am Yisrael hears in Tanakh. That's the last dated Nebuah. Because at the beginning of Baicheni, there's no Nevi'im after Zechariah with the date on them. It could be Malachi was later, but there's no date. Now, this Nebuah is happening during the reign of Darius. If I don't look at outside history, the king after Darius is Xerxes, who fits perfectly with Ahasuerus. Historically, the 3rd year of his reign, there's a big war. He goes to war against the Greeks, getting the big army together in Shushan, claiming himself king of all kings. It's like the outside history is a perfect match to Megillat Esther, with the dates and everything. In year 7, they lose the battle of Salamis, and he sort of goes thick and he blames it. He needs a scapegoat, and someone takes over his government for him, and he's sort of in hiding. And then, of course, he needs a scapegoat, probably the Jews. But it fits, the historical plot fits in real history very nicely. There's not a word of it in the Megillah, because the 6 months where the army's staging in Shushan in year 3 is a big party. For who? Who's at the party? Remember? Chel Paras U'Madai? It's all there, you have to read carefully. It's a party for the army, because when the generals are planning the battle, what are the soldiers doing? Having cookouts and having parties. Remember when the ship docks at the port? There's a lot of parnasa for certain people. You know, World War II. Never mind. There's so the next generation is after the temple is finally built and Zechariah calls the people to return. Guess what happens? Nothing. And people remain. And that's the question is Megillat Esther not just telling you how God saved us, but is it alluding, maybe there's a reason why God almost had us wiped out as a wake-up call. Now, what's the hole in the bagel? People don't return it. It didn't work. But of course, but if you read the rest of earlier Jewish history, it rarely ever works, the wake-up calls. But that's the sad thing. But I'm getting, all I want to say is it could be, if God's hidden hand is behind how we're saved, it could be God's hidden hand is also why we're almost punished, which is part of the also message of the Megillah. Now, the last line was what? Who's going to be in Jerusalem having the audience of people waiting for guidance? And Ish Yehudi. You can take a wild guess how many times you have that phrase in Tanakh. Twice. And how's Megillah begin? There's an Ish Yehudi. Where should the Ish Yehudi be? In Yerushalayim HaBirah, making a name for it. Okay, right? And we have an Ish Yehudi where? Shushan HaBirah. Like we've switched Yerushalayim with Shushan. And where do we celebrate Shushan Purim?
Yerushalayim.
And what's his name, for God's sake? Marduk. Now, no one ever called, no Jewish mother called their son Marduk by Rishon. But there's a lot of King Marduks in Babylonia, aren't there? Merodach Baladan, Edom Merodach, remember? Merodach Ben Merodach. There's Merodach is every other king is called Marduk. Marduk's a big star in the Cyrus cylinder. Because Marduk was so angry with his people, he brought the Persians to take over, to break the Cyrus cylinder. And don't be surprised, later Jews are called Alexander, remember? After several generations in exile. And why are we giving the genealogy of Mordechai all the way back to 4 generations? Because his great-grandfather was in the first wave of exile, not it? It's not Mordechai was exiled, but rather Ibn Kish was exiled. And he's already 4th generation assimilation. That doesn't mean he's not religious, he's just, he's assimilated. I mean, his name is assimilated. So it could be that maybe that big line might be alluding to something a little bit sarcastic, right? Ish Yehudi, or should he be? Now, if you don't know Zechariah, this is a breadcrumb, even a bagel I told you. But if you don't know Zechariah, you never notice it, right? Now, I just want to prove it now. My last point is, the end of the Megillah is a really strange passage, which is very hard to understand. At the end of the Megillah, Mordechai decides we're going to celebrate this event every year. The same days that was almost disaster. The same day that was a fast day, remember? When we were fighting, 13th and 14th of or 14th and 15th of Adar, when came out. Mordechai's going to turn them into feast days. There's such a thing. The day that was a fast day, the year before, it's going to become a feast day forever. Got that? And what mitzvot do we do? According to the Megillah, what mitzvot do we do on that feast day? It doesn't say read the Megillah. That's a word, but that's not shot. 2 mitzvot. Matanot levyonim and Mishloach manot ish l're'eu. There's no other precedent for a holiday of there's Matanot levyonim, that's classic. It's every holiday. But Mishloach manot ish l're'eu, unheard of. And what's that to do with the Purim story? Understand? It's not like eating matzah has to do with coming out of Egypt. Those 2 mitzvot have nothing to do with the story, nothing major to do with the story. And it can't be by chance. Now, I should have mentioned, if you had to name this holiday, what would you call it? I don't know. Would you call it by chance? If the whole goal is to find God behind the events, would you call it by chance? That would be, it's like saying Mazel Tov, right? Yeah. So you know what the name of the holiday is? According to the Megillah? Lottery. Lotteries. These are by chance. Doesn't the Megillah say that?
Yeah.
Okay, Korean Leil Purim. That's the name of the holiday? Because of the pour that Haman did?
Well, that's what the day.
That's by chance, what? That's how they came out, but that's the beauty, everything came out by chance.
The furthest date.
What? At the first that we lucked out,
Furthest
yeah,
date,
you get more time to bite our nails. But the calling the holiday a lotteries, you feel poor, it's like, but that's exactly, it's counterintuitive, but that's the whole point. We're hiding, the things aren't by chance. We call the holiday by chance. No. So remember it says that everyone kept it, but for some reason the next year they got to send the letter again. So look at the letter they sent. The first letter in Pasach Chaf, now in source D. Okay? Mordechai writes all these things down, sends Svarim. They keep this law of Purim. And what do you call it? Just like the days that we rested in were the month that everything turned around from Yavon Simcha, Me'evel Yom Tov, to make the Mei Mishteh Simcha, that's the original one. At the end of the Megillah, Mordechai and Esther have to write a second letter. Remember, there's no more Hamas, no one's paying attention. What's it say there? Vatichtov Esther b'nti. Vatichtov Esther malka bat Abichai Mordechai b'nti b'chotokev. There's a second Purim letter. What's the purpose of the letter? Read carefully. He's sending a letter that includes what? To make sure they understand and keep what? The first letter, which was to keep holiday by doing and turning a fast day, turning a sad day to a holiday. Got it? And under what authority? What's the letter end with? The content of the letter is Divrei Shalom Be'emet, and the purpose of the letter is to make sure that the Jews keep the first letter, to keep this minhag every year. And under what authority? Even though it's a new, how can rabbis make up something new? For the same authority, for the same reason, the Jews took upon themselves to fast the 4 fast days to remember Jerusalem. For the same underlying reason, we're going to institute the feast days to remember Yerushalayim. I want to add that. Got my point? There's no doubt that these final lines is screaming Zechariah. Why? Why is the content of the letter Divrei Shalom Be'emet? Remember? In Zechariah, the 4 fast days will become holidays on what condition? Emet v'shalom mahavo. And the fast days will turn Yemei Mishteh B'Simcha. That was less than what they heard. So I think what Mordechai and Esther are doing, they're making up a virtual Zechariah holiday, turning the fast day to a feast day, and everything being the opposite. And that's going to be that's my breadcrumb. You follow? Now, if you know your Zechariah, you'll catch the breadcrumb, right? You'll see it's got to be connected. That can't be all these things can't be by chance. Now, yeah.
The only problem is this is all happening in Persia. And the purpose of Zechariah is for
the Jews to return.
Yeah.
Or it could be written in Jerusalem and then taken to go up, making fun of the Jews.
Right.
Okay. Yeah. That's the question, who wrote it and why it was written. Right. Then say Mordechai wrote it. Mordechai wrote this letter.
Yeah.
Who wrote we got? We got Esther, parody, whatever you want to call it, satire parody, written by the Jews in Jerusalem, making fun of the Jews in Teaneck,
yeah.
or like doing no sure, but hiding it, or is it written in listen, the minhag is celebrated, maybe, but Ishur Eil, remember all those things in Zechariah? Ishur Eil, that was the first part. The Evanim part was in the first paragraph that we didn't read, but that's classic. But the idea that it's not just about making aliyah. You can make aliyah, but if you don't sanctify God, what's the point? It's recognize the opportunity, but when you come back, what type of society you build? Is it full of truth? Is it justice? Is it kindness? Are you like other nations? Just to be the new bully of the beast doesn't help anything.
Also, so the Leibtag was destroyed because of
Sinai Chinam. Yeah, and that's what they're trying to stop.
Well, why do this as a crime? Why not make this?
That's obfuscation. You follow? Because if you don't find it, when you find it, oh, it hits you.
But sometimes it's good to be hit on that.
Yeah, but sometimes it's good to see a good play and say, oh, wait, that bum in the movie, that's really me. I never noticed how stupid I was. And then good literature, isn't that it? But again, that title is a prophetic tool of obfuscation. That's why I want to show you. Chumash does that. So I'm taking my son can do the same thing. Now, one way not to notice this message, there's 2 ways. If you don't learn Navi, especially you don't learn Zechariah, you won't notice it, no problem, right? If you're drunk, if you're drunk, you don't notice either. So we're machmer. We get drunk and we don't learn Navi. And then you can just enjoy the holiday. So that's the thing. That's why I told you Shivas are non-profit. They don't study
PH.
Anyway, that's the idea, but the main goal I want to get the idea of, if the Megillah wants the reader to find God behind the events, there's a value in obfuscating because the message is much stronger. I wanted to add, I think that's no chiddush, that everything's hidden. That's why they call her name Esther. Her name was Hadassah. Why call her Esther? And why call Mordechai Mordechai? Might not have been his real name. That's the question. Was the book written to teach you history? Or the book? I'm not saying it didn't happen in the events, but it's written like a fairy tale. You can't miss that. I mean, from a literary point of view, it's a perfect fairy tale. Everything's balanced with the middle. That's the only Grossman syrup. That's from a literary. It's a masterpiece of literature. But that's when you write a like that. That's not history. You follow? That's a written. That doesn't mean it didn't happen in the event, but the way you're telling the event is it's a beautiful history.
It's also possible the obfuscation was because it was written specifically for diaspora Jewry, and they didn't want the local governments
Yeah, that's
to know.
history to know what's going on. I've heard that before also.
Yeah.
But I think what?
Upset the donors.
Yeah. But that idea that finding God behind events, that God's hidden, it's so true to life and so true to. But that's why I want to start with the whole. I spent so much time on Chumash and Har Sinai, because obfuscation is a tool. It's important, not just in Jewish texts, in life in general. Next thing I want to impress someone with the chocolate bar.
It's
So,
great.
okay, thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
And,
You going to your 50th?
Yes, I am.
You are?
Yes, I am. It's end of March.
Yeah, I just saw it.
Yes, yours is next year.
Thank you.
what's it, Danielle? You guys do this, I take it?
I didn't realize.
You put the basic on.
Safe travel.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
No, I
Sure.
went to 520.
Oh, wow. Okay. Just say Margot.
Yeah, I know, you said
That's
that.
I know.
People forget.
There's a show up for years. I go to Bill, get him in
Yes.
Israel.
Megillah is it's a supposedly to a Shakespearean play.
Yes.
It's levels,
Yes,
ways to read.
yes. I was also thinking through this because I did some deacons with divine providence and all the times with Yosef.
Yeah,
It was
yeah.
the same
The same
kind of
kind of thing where, and you don't realize it until the end. That's the whole
No,
point.
they have to-
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Can't know until the end.
And the way we.
We did volunteer stuff. There are like all these WhatsApp groups.
You can't know until the end.
Amazing.
So if you want to go, let me know. I'll hook you up.
I should say my shit, right? I'm sure.
A lot of people.
Like you said with COVID, I
Right.
thought that was it. Now we're with this, but it's not gonna be my life. And somebody said to me, do you believe this?
Oh yeah, who was saying it's all about? Oh, I know. Somebody, a friend of ours.
Yeah.